Hi, AP Seminar students. I am here to walk you through your IWA rubric. I've already done this in the past. You probably could go and watch one of those old videos, but I'm going to make it one more time just because I want to make sure all the same information is getting to everyone and you are going through those key important things to remember as we start getting ready to write your paper. First, I'm going to reiterate this. I know I already told both classes this, but this is super important. You can get an off-topic decision if your paper is not clearly related to the stimulus material. Remember, your reviewer is supposed to take 10 seconds only to determine if your research paper is actually on topic. So it's really smart in your headings and in your title to be very clear about what your connection to the stimulus material is. Please also be sure that your paper can include stimulus materials very clearly, but if you have misused a quote, a stat, or anything like that, it could still be counted as off topic. So please be sure that whatever materials you are choosing to incorporate into your both your topic and then your paper, that it's definitely appropriate and chosen correctly. So that's that first thing I want to point out. Secondly, row 2, same idea. Just making sure that you're using that stimulus material correctly. It cannot just be a jumping off point or a token reference. You can't just include a quote in your introduction and call it good. It needs to play a meaningful role throughout your paper. So I've told both classes you need to incorporate it into your body of your paper, not just in your introduction and conclusion. Going down into row 2. This is really specific. Read these teacher requirements to yourself. It needs to be more specific than just this is important or this matters to our world. It needs to be very clear and very specific. It can't just be happiness matters to everyone. Yay, and move on. You have to be really clear, and you'll be seeing that in some of the examples that we go through here soon. Going on to row 3, this is all about the different perspectives, and hopefully you'll have a better idea of what those will look like as we get into our sample papers here soon. Please be sure that means that they have to enter conversation with each other. So you're going to see that again in some of the higher papers. You do need to see that you are able to take one source and analyze it with another source, compare, contrast, synthesize ideas, and all that stuff that good writers really do. This is the hardest row, in my opinion, or one of the hardest rows for our students to hit. So this is something you will want to be taking your best effort on and doing really your best. Also, I do want to point out that your conversations do not have to be competing, or I'm sorry, your perspectives don't have to be competing. You do not have to have a different, a totally different viewpoint. Like if you're going to write about I don't know, maybe that's not a best point, but if you don't have to always include the total opposite response, you just have to use kind of different perspectives on it, even if both perspectives are saying ultimately the same thing. Oh, another big thing in this row is transitions. And you can tell a paper is not going to be putting these perspectives into conversation very well if they are not using good transitions. If you just jump from, this country views it this way, and this country views it this way, and this country views it this way, you will not probably get the high score here because they do need to see those transitions and how your ideas are connecting to each other. Also, limitations are a big one in here too. I have that in my notes. Yeah, there we go. So objections, implications, and limitations. We spent a lot of time talking about that in semester 1. We'll talk about that more as we look at sample papers here. But you do have to do that consistently throughout your different arguments and your different perspectives. If you don't do it consistently, you will not get the high score here. Okay, I think that's all my notes for row 3. Let's talk about row 4. Establishing argument. This is a really hard row, and this is the one with 12 points. This is a really big one. My notes that I've shared before, headings are a really big deal. They have to make sense. You have to see those different connections. You want to see student commentary driving the argument more than just your evidence. So quotes are great, but if you just use quotes and you don't actually comment on it or synthesize it or analyze it, you're not going to get the high points here. You need to explicitly state your reasoning as to why you're using a piece of evidence or why you're making a point. Your reasoning cannot be flawed. You're going to see some examples of papers where the reasoning is very flawed, like, okay, that's a nice idea, but you didn't actually prove it in your evidence. Also, this is the one thing that even though they don't include it in the rubric, it's good to think about using, is having a counter argument. And that just shows that you're really thinking about all sides and you're able to analyze all sides of the argument. Going on to row 5, selecting and using evidence. You guys, I think you've heard this so much. You need to hear, the best pieces of evidence, the best scholarly work, variety of scholarly work. So it can't all just be from the same news organization or from the newspapers. You should have some newspapers and journal articles and scientific research and things like that. You also need to contextualize your evidence in your quotes. You can't just drop it and let it sit there. You need to introduce it, state it, and then comment on it. Okay, and then finally, as you get into rows 6 and 7, your different conventions, the College Board is very clear on this. They are not going to require APA or MLA, but they do have to be consistent. And so if you see inconsistencies or lots of errors and they can't identify which type of style you're doing, you'll probably get at least a medium here. You do need to cite the stimulus material, so be sure you do that. And make sure that your in-text citations match the works cited page. Finally, you've seen the College Board is pretty lenient on grammar errors. Even so, hold yourself to the highest standard possible. You will see sample papers where there are a lot of errors and that person is still given a high score here. Even so, we should be putting in the most flawless paper possible. You've got lots of time and lots of people to help you review it. So let's make sure we all get those high scores there. Those are all my comments for the rubric. And now I'll have you take a look at your assignment for today. So I'm going to talk you through this now too, as long as I'm up here. Your assignment here is to answer these rubric questions. So I want you to put your answer here, say true or false, and then give an explanation. And then as you get down here, you're going to be doing another part of your assignment, which is researching and choosing 5 sources. So what you're going to be doing here is now that you've chosen where your argument is going or what your topic is at least, I want you to start finding those 5 sources and then write a 2-sentence explanation about each source. And this could be just like why you chose it, why you think it's helpful, a specific quote that's in there, why it's relevant. And then when you're finished, I want you to answer these research questions or reflection questions, down here. It's pretty simple and straightforward. We've basically done this before together as we've gone through our sample task 1 and task 2 papers in the past. But if you have any questions, of course, reach out. I encourage you to start, as always, at the library or another database that you may know of before going to anything else like Google Scholar or anywhere else. All right, guys, that's all I have for today, and good luck researching.